Good afternoon, and welcome to the Africana Studies and Research Center. I am Rashay Richardson, Associate Professor of African American Literature in the department. I am so delighted and honored to introduce Elaine Brown, who was the chairperson of the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense from 1974 until 1977, alongside my colleague, Naliwe Brooks, the interim director of the Africana Studies and Research Center. They will be sharing a dialogue with us this afternoon entitled Radical Reform and New Age Racism in America, a Conversation. We are so privileged to be in the presence of Elaine Brown, the only woman to ever serve as the Black Panther Party's chairperson, and as we stand on the cusp of the 50th anniversary of its founding, reflecting on the leading role of this organization in the Black liberation struggle and the national and global impact that it made, beginning in the 1960s. As a scholar, I have been interested in thinking about the roots of the organization's name in the Black Belt of Alabama, which is where I am from, and first learned of these connections when I saw segments of Eyes on the Prize on the Lowndes County Freedom Organization in history class as a high school student at the historic St. Jude Educational Institute in Montgomery. At a local level, and here at Cornell, the Black Panther Party's relationship to Black student movement, then as now, has been felt from the Willard Strait occupation to the platform that Cornell's chapter of Black Students United developed last spring, which outlined issues that they feel need to be addressed, drawing on the programmatic platform What We Want and What We Believe. I first learned about how Elaine Brown made history in becoming this organization's first and only leader as a woman when I read her 1992 best-selling autobiography entitled A Taste of Power, a Black Woman's Story as a student in the classroom of Dr. Gloria Wade Gels at Spelman College in a course entitled Black Women's Autobiography. And Dr. Gels sends hugs. She says that you and Erica are her favorite mother-daughter portrait. Indeed, I first heard Elaine Brown speak that same year at a book signing held at Spelman. A Taste of Power is a monumental work that helped to teach my generation when we were at Spelman what it means to say her name, to invoke the contemporary movement by discussing the impact of state violence on Black women alongside Black men, and by acknowledging Black women's typically overlooked contributions to Black activism. I am honored that Elaine Brown is here today too, because her daughter, Erica Suzanne, and I were both students at Spelman in the early 1990s. That is to say, I treasure, respect, and honor Elaine Brown, not only for how she has made and shaped history, but also as the mother of a friend. More recently, when I taught my Black Panther Party autobiography course here in Africana this past spring, students found many things to admire about A Taste of Power from our close reading of the first chapter entitled Assumption, which begins, I have all the guns and all the money. It made a pivotal impact in the course in helping us to reflect on the role of race and gender in shaping the Black liberation struggle. This book is an indispensable resource for anyone who is serious about studying and reflecting on the Black Panther Party. Throughout the last 4 decades, Elaine Brown has committed her life to effecting progressive change in the United States. In addition to authoring A Taste of Power, which was recently optioned by HBO, she is the author of The Condemnation of Little B, New Age Racism in America. Beyond Black Panther Party leadership, which included editing the party's iconic newspaper, running for public office in Oakland in 1973 and 1975, and leading the party From 1974 to 1977 as its chairperson, Brown's recent work focuses on the radical reform of the criminal justice system. She is the executive director of the Michael Lewis Legal Defense Committee and the CEO of Oakland and the World Enterprises, the mission of which is to launch and sustain for-profit businesses for ownership by formerly incarcerated people and others facing extreme barriers to employment. The first business, an urban farm in West Oakland, California, has been launched. She is a member of the Justice for Mario Woods Coalition and the Kenneth Harding Jr. Foundation. She was the executive director and founder of the nonprofit education corporation Fields of Flowers, co-founder of Mothers Advocating Juvenile Justice and the National Alliance for Radical Prison Reform, and a member of the Sterling Committee of the December 9th Georgia and International Prisoners' Rights Movement. She has recorded 2 albums of original songs, 1 for Motown Records. I am also pleased to introduce my colleague. Professor Elaine Brown is an associate professor in Africana Studies and Feminist Gender and Sexuality Studies. An interdisciplinary scholar, she works on the racial implications of beauty, fashion, and adornment, racial inequality in education, race, food, and the politics of the city, and Black women's studies. Her work explores how race and gender both impact and are impacted by popular culture, social history, and political life in the United States. The author of 3 books, she received her BA from Spelman College, where she majored in English, and received her MA and PhD degrees in American Studies from the University of Iowa. The author of 3 books and numerous articles and essays, Rooks has received funding from organizations such as the Ford Foundation and the Woodrow Wilson School Educational Research Center to aid in her research into issues surrounding race-based inequality, economics, and education. She lectures frequently on topics at colleges and universities around the country and is a frequent contributor to popular publications such as the Chronicle of Higher Education, Time Magazine, and The Hill. Her current research, for which she has received a Kaplan Family Distinguished Faculty Fellowship Award and a Residential Faculty Fellowship from the Atkinson Center for a Sustainable Future, will explore the issues of race and food justice in the United States. Today's event is co-sponsored by the American Studies Program, Feminist Gender and Sexuality Studies Program, and the Center for Transformative Action. It is the kickoff event for the campus-wide year-long series, Freedom Interrupted, Race, Gender, Nation, and Policing. With that said, I'd like to turn the floor over to Elaine Brown and Aliwe Rooks and ask that you join me in welcoming them.
Is a Black woman's journey. And in doing the research for today, there were so many moments and pieces of your life that I hadn't fully realized that you were a Green Party nominee for president. And she got a whole critique of that. So we're gonna go on a journey from your childhood, a little bit, just a little bit, through the Panthers, quick, we're going quick. And we're gonna end up with contemporary comments and contemporary things, right? So I'm gonna start with a quote just asked you to talk about from Philadelphia. Your little girl, I think you're 7.
Can everyone hear her?
You can hear me because I can project. She's 7 years old.
Not very well.
Okay. So anyway, she's 7 years old, and she's remembering being 7 in this passage that I'm going to read. She is creating a space for herself that is special. You say that regularly, right? Like as you're talking about your childhood, the things that made her feel like she stood out. You're going to an experimental school, primarily with Jewish people who are wealthy. She is from, would you say it's the ghetto of the world? North Philadelphia?
I say North Philadelphia. It's Mumbai of it's everything you can think of.
So this is where she's from. And at 7 years old, this is what she recalls saying. You know, Elaine, you're not like the other colors. You're different. You don't even look like one. My white friends and teachers at Thaddeus Stevens were telling me all the time. Eventually, I discovered that my ultimate disguise could be manipulated through words, in their voices. I listened to them, paid attention to their grammar, their syntax, their cadence. I learned to speak exactly like white people, learned to enunciate their language, to say these and not these, and he'll be going rather than he be going. Finally, I became white, at least until 2:17 p.m. when school was let out, when the bell would toll and the curtain fall, and I would be returned by fate through the subway tunnel, down Susquehanna, down 21st Street, to 2051 West York Street, and back to being black. Yeah, you want to talk about that moment?
Well, it wasn't just a moment, obviously. That moment was a culminating moment that I described, but I think that anybody black in America has had that moment, even if we don't want to admit it. And it really doesn't matter how we look. It only matters that everybody knows about code switching, and especially black people, we have our black boys and we have our white boys. Hi, how are you? And then we have our girl, what's going on boys, right? And so we got two boys and then we have to live that way because we don't want to be treated in an inferior way. We don't want to be inferiority as equal to black. Now I didn't know this until I went to these schools. But I first want to thank you, Dr. W. Wade Brooks, that I have known, whose mother I have known. And we can talk about D9 if you ever want to talk about all the connection between us. And I want to thank Rashay because I did not know about her connection to my daughter. My daughter probably say, you know you told her. But anyway, what's wrong with you? So I want to thank everyone who brought me here, especially you for inviting me to come here and share some of my thoughts and for everyone to come out and hear what we have to say. So that's just a formality. But as to the dichotomy or the duality of being black in America, as Du Bois talks about it, the duality that we have to live. So I tried not to write this from a perspective of where I was at the time that I wrote it, but where I was then. It was very, very difficult. It was very hard. I thought I was going to die when I wrote the sentence. Finally, I became white. I didn't just hate being black. I was no longer black. And the reason was very simple. It really wasn't about the things that ultimately we can talk about, as we do in the black community. We talk about hair and color, because we're still talking about those things today, right? We're still defining ourselves by how we look. We like Beyonce because Beyonce is not quite too dark or too anything to cause us to be shocked in America. So I'm not even going to deal with that part because that's sort of the analysis when you get to understand where you are. But when I was that age, I wanted to be white because white people had things that I didn't have. And ultimately, I really just wanted to be Jewish because I thought white people were Jewish. I didn't know any other white people. There's like 2 German Americans, and they were German, and 2 Irish and whatever else. But everybody that I knew from kindergarten forward that was white was Jewish. And I just wanted to be them. Once I went to their house and I saw that they didn't have 25 white bulbs, and we did. I didn't know we had 25 white bulbs until I saw 100 white bulbs. I didn't know about a refrigerator until I saw their refrigerators. I didn't know about carpeting. I didn't know that everybody didn't have roaches running through their house. I didn't know that people had all these things that white people that I went to their house. And when I was a little girl in the 2nd grade and I went to Barbara Kiesel's house and she had all these big lights and they had a big dining room table and they had food in their refrigerators. And I went to Arlene's house, her last name, whatever it is, and she had ice cubes in a refrigerator. I've never seen anything like this. And so I thought, wow, this is how white people live. And they had a father at home, and everybody wasn't fighting in their house, everybody wasn't doing all the stuff in their neighborhoods, and I was like, this is safe, and this is beautiful, so I just need to be white. I just need to be white. And after a while, look, I could be. I'm not really like everybody black. I'm not really black. You know, white people tell me that. The way they told Obama, you're articulate. You're so articulate. You know how we always get told we're articulate to distinguish us from the other black people in the hood that we don't want to identify with. And we ourselves start feeling that way. You know, somebody comes in, and somebody rolled up in here with some pants sagging, with a double grill, you know. What's going on? We'd be like, oh, no, that's embarrassing. So what do we, it's like Black Lives Matter. What do we want it to matter to white people? Because Black Lives Matter to me all along, right? So there is this huge cultural identity, all these things that I got caught up in because I went to these white schools. And it was horrible because psychologically I thought I was a schizophrenic by the time I was a teenager because I was constantly code switching. I could never be around white people and black people at the same time. Because I was like, well, now what do I do? You know, it's like, am I supposed to be white? Am I supposed to be black? Because I had that part down, right? I mean, in the street, we're playing double dutch, you know, and I'm like, I'm as bad as everybody on the street. I'm better because I'm smaller. And people don't think I'm black enough. That's another thing, right? I wasn't black enough. So there's all of that, and that comes from, of course, the history of slavery in America. And like a lot of people don't want to talk about it, say, it's over, can't we get over it? Turn the page, right? And you know, I like to quote, when I lived in France for quite a while, I lived there in the 90s. And there was a guy named Paul Touvier who was put on trial as a Nazi collaborator. And this was the first time the French had ever acknowledged that they did collaborate with the Nazis, which they did anyway. That's for anti-Semitism. But anywho, and Touvier was put on trial. He was like 90 years old. And they said, and the French were crying out, all the French magazines, why are we talking about this? This is so old. Can't we just turn the page? The man is 90, the war is over, let's just turn the page. And that's what we say in America, don't we? We don't want to talk about slavery, talk about Jefferson being a slaveholder, and rapist and all that he was. We just want to turn the page, it's over, move on. And Touvier, the French prosecutor said, you are right, we must turn the page. But before we can turn the page, we have to write the page. And that's what I had to do. I had to write this page. I had to acknowledge this incredible pain that I suffered as a black person. And then there's being a black woman, there's being poor, there's all that. But just being black in America, the psychological trauma of just being a little girl finding myself unworthy and in the wrong place. And so that I didn't want to be there. And I hated my family. I didn't want my mother to show up at school. They would recognize that I was really black. Like if my mother showed up, they would know I was black, you know, because my mother was gonna, she would have a headscarf on. She would have a little hat like Amy Eisenhower and the little gloves. She wasn't looking, you know, white enough. My mother wasn't in the links. My mother wasn't a member of the black bourgeoisie. She was this working class woman with this working class attitude. And if she showed up at school, they would know that I actually was black. They didn't know where I lived because I lived far away, but really I did. So it goes on and on, the psychology of being black and then being a woman. And that psychology carries forward further into the woman question.
But let me ask you.
Oh, you interrupted.
Because we were in class together today, and I know one question, she can go for an hour. So since we want to
No, you got, no, that's right.
Yeah. So last week, you were at Emory with Dr. Beverly Guy Chef Tones was having a Spelman kind of moment.
Right, yeah,
and she sent me a question she wanted me to ask you.
that she didn't get
That she didn't get to.
Wonder why. Go ahead.
So this is a quote, your quote from Gender Talk, which was a book that she and Johnette Cole did that you were interviewed in.
Yeah.
So what you say is, there are three sources of our oppression as black women: patriarchy, capitalism, and racism. But for me, the most important thing has been poverty.
Right.
Yeah. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, you know, people have asked me, well, you know, there's this class question, and we're all in the same class. We all have the same issues, right? because we have a class relationship. Poor white people have a class relationship, Mexicans, Latinos. And so there's a class question that's more important than anything. That's not true because I'm black, and so you didn't get that part of it. You didn't do that. Jorge was not in the cotton field. I'm just going to put it to you bluntly. If you didn't understand that, save it for a question or other question. So 250 years of slavery is in our DNA at this point. So that's a big issue, race. But race and class merge in black people, and only in black people, because we were the only people in a class called the slave class. And the slave class was made up of African descendants and so forth. Even though despite the people want to talk about the Irish indentured servants, I don't want to hear about it, because that's not relevant to the point of this conversation. So when we get down to it, there's that. But in the end of the day, I did not get any benefits or was not oppressed more than my brother for 250 years as a slave. I didn't get a benefit as a woman. So I didn't get any benefit, and I didn't get any other thing. People say, well, black women were raped. It's true, but black men were also doing service as mandingos, so we just don't talk about that part of it. We didn't have a big gender issue when we were slaves. We were all in the field, we all took the lash, we were all in the house, men and women. Women weren't in the house, and men know it wasn't. So we didn't have the luxury of gender identity for 250 years, and we really didn't have it after that. All of our women, you know, when the Gloria Steinem feminists used to say, out of the kitchen and into the street. Remember that? My mother would say, I want to get out the kitchen, your kitchen. So we wanted to be in our kitchen. And if our men had been able to pay for our houses and keep us in the kitchen, we'd have been happy, actually. And then we would have fought that vote. If we had the luxury of that fight, we would have fought it. So for me, the biggest problem is to just be poor. And as Du Bois said, to be poor in the land of dollars is a bottom of hardship. And so to not have any food, or to not have any things that you need or that you then wanted when you're living in a universe where you can, right over there is the gleaming downtown of every city, and we're always right on the edges, right, in the ghetto, in the hood, you know, so forth and so on. And it's right there, water everywhere. So to me, to be poor and to have nothing is really, truly the most difficult thing. So the class question really is supreme. Because if I'm white and I live in the hollers of Kentucky, I'm really not feeling that. I might feel like if I lived in a city that as a white person I'm better than you, but people in the hollers of Kentucky probably don't know poor black people. So they're really not worried about what black people do, but they are still eating roadkill, and I am not making this up and being stereotypical, because I know too many people that do come out of the hollers of Kentucky and Appalachia. And so to be poor is really the worst thing of all. I don't care where you are in the world, that's a hardship. In America, all of these things converge in black people. All of that converges in us, because we are both a class and we are distinguished as a so-called race, which of course is not a scientific term. But I do think there are issues of womanhood that have to be discussed. And I want to say one thing about that I was going to say, and I'm glad you stopped because that goes into this question. And that is, you know, I had a young white woman say to me, you said to this woman in this class, at some school, that you called her sister, and you said everybody was equal under the sun, and we were all human beings under the sun. That's what the Black Panther Party stood for, we did. But you didn't call me sister. Why is that? And I said, that's because you're not my sister. People get mad when I say that. You don't know what it's like to be a woman in the United States of America and be black when this is a patriarchy, right? And I don't know of any country in America, in the world right now that is not a patriarchy. Somebody knows that there's some little teeny country in some islands where there's not a patriarchy, may not. But I think all of the countries of the world are patriarchies. That means that we define ourselves according to the father, right? And then we have all those other structural things, and yada yada, and there's equality of women, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, it's a patriarchal world, right, that we live in. And that means that men have a certain power that women don't have. And the way that we have generally gotten power over these centuries is by having a man who has power. And the way that we get the man who has power, as in all of other natures, you are attracted to men or women, right? You are attracted to each other. Like birds, like other animals, it's not unusual, so let's not get hung up on that. And attractive means to be beautiful, to be attractive, right? You know, if you get 2 deer, who is it that has antlers? Is it deer? Reindeer, somebody has, you know, antlers. Don't have them broken down antlers because you're talking about sitting at night. So, no, really, they're broken down antlers. That's why they fight. So they, look, this is nature. This is the nature that we know. Stuff is that complicated. Read Nature World or whatever it is. So, beauty is a way of attracting the other person. And power is a way of not being at the bottom, right? So in order for you to attract someone, you have to be beautiful. In order for you to be beautiful in America, you have to be white. Now we have to realize that whether you like it or not, that's the way the game is, okay? I can't even talk about all the manifestations of that. I can't even be challenged on it because it's such a fact of life. I don't care if it's an ugly white woman, it's better than any black person. Whatever ugly means. Ugly usually means not symmetrical, really. Beauty is defined by symmetry. You know, if you have like an extra big head, or, you know, or for a body that doesn't, it's symmetry. No, seriously. The studies on beauty are that beauty is symmetrical. So anyway. No, I don't want to go there because then we'll. The point I'm making is that we as black women, you, and I'm speaking to this young woman, you do not know 250 years, you don't have that under your belt in your DNA at 250 years, where you were not even a woman. You were just a slave. You took the lash like a man. Nobody gave you any privileges as a woman. You took the lash like a man. You did whatever you had to do. You did to feel like a man. You were a man as far as they were concerned, except for when people wanted to have their way. And then, I want to finish. And then, you don't know what it's like to doubt yourself and your beauty on the basis of the texture of your hair, the color of your skin, the size of your nose, your lips, your breasts, your behind, your hands, your legs, the structure of your feet. All of that we talk about right now. Oh, that's not black, that's too black, whatever it is. And so we have to deal with that reality, we black women. And we didn't get the benefit of having the man take care of us in a little home because our men couldn't even get a job, blah, blah, blah. So no, you're not my sister in that journey. You don't know that journey. You can't know it. I ain't blaming you, but I'm letting you know that you don't know it. So that's the point I want to make.
Let's talk about the Panthers. So I discovered today in class that the founding of the Panthers, what y'all did, who you were, what you stood for, why you came into being, is not quite as well known as I would have thought, as they looked at you blankly, like, yes, the Black Panthers, yes, they did things. So can you just give us just a sort of summary of the program's priorities, the reasons for being?
Well, I think first, what people don't know is the Black Panther was not a nationalist organization, and we were not a group of thugs and chauvinists that somehow beat up the women or whatever it was that people think the Black Panther Party was. In that superficial imagery that J. Edgar Hoover specifically like to promulgate. We were an organization that was founded in the height of a bunch of other movements that were going on in terms of calling for black power, so forth and so on, human rights, civil rights, and that our goal was the liberation of black people in America. And, but we recognized, because of quite frankly the genius of one of our co-founders, who did that in order to achieve our subjective goal, because everybody didn't have the goal of black liberation, it didn't really interest other people per se, but it interested us because we first decided that we were an oppressed people, and that's the first analysis, is to accept that this is an oppressed group, or to identify yourself as oppressed, and not get thinking that because you have, say, I don't know, a black president, that you might be free. So, and that's the definition of freedom. So we looked at our people and we recognized we were an oppressed people, so the first thing we did was we said we were interested, our goal, our agenda was the liberation of black people. We also said, because we had, you know, we were dialectical materialists, we were Marxist, Leninists, we were communists, we were not capitalists, we were not anti-capitalist, we were communists with a small c, of course, we didn't have anything to do with the CPUSA, which is just a secondary conversation. So, in our analysis of what was wrong and what we needed to do, we outlined a 10-point platform, and much of which you could have seen in some ways on the back of the Nation of Islam newspaper, Muhammad Speaks, but we had it a little different because we didn't want a nation of our own. We were interested in of black liberation. But in order to achieve that, we had to ask ourselves, what were the things that we had to do objectively? What were the things that we had to put into place? Could black people actually have a separate nation in America? The answer was, you must be kidding. This is not an analysis, it's like idiocy. Oh, you feel like you can just go grab up the state of Pennsylvania or something, and that's gonna be your state. No, it's not gonna happen. This is what we call a poor analysis, sophism, right? So we said, okay, what does that mean inside of the United States of America? We could look to liberation struggles on the continent of Africa. We could look at the Cuban Revolution. We could look at the Chinese. We could look at the then struggle for liberation of the Vietnamese people from under the boot of first the French and now the United States. All of these were struggles that were going on all around us, but they were really not that relevant because the conditions were so different, because we were in the heart of the empire of the United States of America that was really in control of the entire world militarily, because it has all the guns and all the money. So how do we analyze the conditions that we're living in? And our analysis was that, first of all, black people had to be organized around their own liberation. Black people had to decide we wanted to be free in the first place. And so that's one thing. We had to organize our own people. But the other thing was, there was a moral and there was a strategic reason to say we could never talk about the freedom of black people in the face of the oppression of other people. How could we talk about the freedom of black people in the face of the oppression of the native people? We're going to be free, but then the natives on the reservation will replace the oppressor. You know, the way the feminists like to talk about the glass ceiling. All I want to do is be the general in the army to go order people to kill some Afghans myself, as opposed to a man. I want the right to kill some Afghans. You know, so that's the way we analyze things from this kind of perspective. So how can we talk about the freedom of black people in the face of the oppression of the native people? So we helped to form a coalition with the American Indian Movement, AIM. How can we talk about the freedom of black people when half the Mexicans and Chicanos of the United States that grow 50% of the food in the state of California that grows 50% of the food that America eats, languishing in the Central Valley like dogs and in the barrios of America? So we said we can't, so we helped to form a coalition with the brown and red. And what about the Puerto Ricans languishing in the sweatshops of America? Second-class citizens trying not to be black, being Puerto Rican. You know, looking a little black, don't want to be black, but they get it, even they got it. Everybody's trying. Nigerians come here and don't want to be black. You know what I mean? You want to make that stuff up? People get it. They get what that means, right? They know what it means to be. Am I right, Doctor? So, people come from the continent don't want to be black. Because everybody gets it. So we formed a coalition with the Young Lords out of Chicago, headed by Cha Jimenez, and in New York, headed by Jose Feliciano, excuse me, I've changed his name. And then so forth and so on. And what about the poor whites of America that had the same class relationship that we have to America, not the same racial issues to deal with? And we formed a coalition with the Young Patriots out of Chicago, up from the bowels of Kentucky and Mississippi, that couldn't stand black people, but suddenly realized that they had to come together with us because we stood on common ground. If we had continued that, we wouldn't have had all these people voting for Trump today, who think that Trump is somehow going to bring them out of their coal mining lifestyle. Anyway, so, and then what about the fact that 50% of the country is oppressed women? So we had to talk about the question of women's liberation. So when people tell me the Black Panther Party was show this, we're the only black organization, much less progressive, much less radical revolutionary organization, that had a paper out called On Women's Liberation. And why we had to be overtly a part and participate in all these struggles for women's liberation, not feminism, not first, second, third rate, whatever that might be. Some way of staying in the country, but I just have my rights under the American flag, whatever. That's how we were. And what about the homosexuals? You said the homosexual. We said gay liberation was our struggle too, because the homosexual, you said in 1970, 1 year after Stonewall, those of you who have ever been gay activists, and I'm not talking about gay pride people. I was in the gay pride parade in San Francisco, one of the biggest gay pride parades this year. So into who? Huey Newton asserted that the homosexual, as we said it then, might be the most oppressed person in America. How can we talk about the liberation of black people when people of all colors who are disabled are absolutely isolated and frustrated in any ability to have any kind of life, can't get a job, can't get out of their house, can't go anywhere on their own, can't go to the grocery store. Even if they had the money, can't get there and all of that. So we talked about joining forces with the Center for Independent Living for Disabled Rights, or Rights for Disabled. How can we talk about the freedom of black people and our brothers and sisters on the continent? And when we say the continent, we're not talking about Europe, we're talking about the continent. That's Africa, that everyone came from. Everyone in this room is an African descendant, no matter whether you recognize it or not. How can we talk about our freedom when South African brothers and sisters sitting under the roof of the Afrikaner? So we said, no, we can't. So we joined, made a coalition with the PAC, Pan-Africanist Congress, as opposed to the ANC. And what about our friends in Zimbabwe? We formed a coalition with ZANU in Zimbabwe, with Frelimo in Mozambique, with the PLO, and more importantly, with the PFLP, who is struggling for the liberation of Palestine and independence of Palestine. And what about the Vietnamese who were struggling to throw off the yoke of the American bombs? And we said, well, they were our brothers and sisters in struggle too, and also in Uruguay and all over the entire world. We saw ourselves as a part of a struggle of all human beings for a new and egalitarian society. So we were revolutionaries who were internationalists, and ultimately we call ourselves revolutionary intercommunalists, but that's another story. Now that's what we did in terms of our ideological understanding. How do we talk about organizing our people? We had to organize our people where people were, not where we wanted to be. You have African groups who are like, oh, we got to go after reparations. We believe in reparations. I'm asking for reparations today. If I get reparations, I'm going to have anything else to say. And I'm now looking at that trade, like 40 acres. I'm going with like 40 million, maybe it should be 40 billion per descendant. And you're going to find some white people over here talking about find that one drop of black blood. I want some reparations, you know. But we haven't written that page about that crime yet, right? Not this country has it officially. We won't even acknowledge it was a crime. Bill Clinton said, it's too late for an apology. Well, if it's too late, then just go ahead and do it, that's it. But anyway, we want all of those things, but in the end of the day, we had to talk about our group. Because we had the Chicanos organizing the same kinds of programs, and also Puerto Ricans and all the groups that we were filming. So what can we do to begin to bring our people together around their own human rights, to be ready for the struggle, as Lenin said. The people will begin to make a demand, and their demands become realized as they make more and more demands, and the government yields, or the czar or whatever, yields to that. The more they ask for, the more they ask for, the more they're going to get. And after a while, they're going to ask for that one thing like freedom. And the people will be ready to seize freedom, but right now they're not ready. And then also in following Lenin's suggestion, and that we said we were the vanguard party, because Lenin identifies the need for a vanguard party. We said the lumpen proletariat, not the proletariat, would be the leaders of the struggle, in the words of Franz Fanon. So we studied all of this, and we made decisions. And so our first thing was, what do we want? One of the things that we need the most was food. People are hungry. People are hungry, right? So what is the sense of that? So we formed the free breakfast for children. And it wasn't very difficult to think about. It was like, children are hungry, they can't learn. Our children weren't learning, they needed food. These are not complicated thoughts, although the government did subsequently do a 10-year study and found that children could not learn if they had food. Nobody can learn if you're hungry, right? If you're sitting there thinking about some food right now, it's going to be like, oh, she's going to hurry up because I have not had lunch. Let me have a cookie. So we formed these free breakfast for children's programs, and we did it as the party expanded into 40-some states in the United States. We had a chapter in almost every state. I don't know what state we missed. Was it Hawaii? Maybe. I don't know. But we ended up with something called the Polynesian Panthers in New Zealand. And we had all kinds of support groups around the world. And we even had a support group, believe it or not, in Tel Aviv, who were the Jews who were the Sabras, who had lived comfortably with the Palestinians before the state of Israel was created. So we saw ourselves as creating a model for how people might begin to organize around the most fundamental issues. So there was the breakfast, and then we did the free clinics, and then free dinner, and then free food in bags of groceries. And In the meantime, of course, we emphasized all of our other programs and ultimately, ran for office and did all these other things. But that was our base program. And those programs were called survival programs because we didn't expect that we would feed the people, but that the people would say, wait a minute, we do have a right. We have a human right to have food, decent food. And they would make that demand. And they did in the case of the breakfast program. We have free breakfast, of course, in the public schools today because of the Black Panther Party. And anyone that doesn't get that, you just have to see the nexus between what the school system will tell you, and they will tell you. So the bottom line is that we started those programs to organize, but also to satisfy an immediate need for food. And we called them survival programs, and they operated under the slogan, survival pending revolution.
Do you want to say a little bit about what led you to become did you say chairman or you said chairman?
Well, originally we said chairman because I took over, the position was called chairman. So
I'm happy to say chairman.
No, I'm saying.
Chairman.
Yeah, well, sometimes you'll see in our newspaper at some point later, but you'll see my picture or something that said chairman. And then later it kind of gets chairperson, I think. So I don't know what it evolved to.
So you can tell us a little bit about what led you to become the chairperson of the Black Panther Party.
Well, the Black Panther Party had a paramilitary structure. We operated very much like the Communist parties do in China and Cuba and elsewhere. We had a central committee, and we formed ourselves around those models. So we had a central committee. It evolved from Huey and Bobby and Huey and Bobby Seale and the few people that were there. And then they had to create some sort of structure. So that structure was there was a central committee, and the central committee dictated what the Black Panther Party did. And in that structure, the central committee then had these chapters evolved. We had to figure out what that meant. And so the chapters would be, for example, you would say, okay, the Southern California chapter. So we had a minister of defense, which was Huey Freedman, and he was always a leader of the Black Panther Party, not the chairman, but the minister of defense, because we thought that that was our other piece. It was defense, self-defense. And so the central committee then, when a chapter went to form, then they would identify people who would be that formation. So you had, in the case of Southern California, where I was, a man named Bunchy Carter, who became the deputy minister of defense. And so everybody was the deputy for a chapter. Everything was a chapter, was a state. Within the state, we had cities that were branches. Within the branch, you had sections within the section, you had subsections, and you had leadership on down. So when one person up at the top would say, you got to have a free breakfast program by next week, then bang, 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 and all the little sections would do what they're supposed to do. So it was not democratic in the bourgeois Western concept. It was what we call democratic centralism, which is how most of the Communist Party formations are throughout the world. And in that, so that there was no getting elected to any office, and nobody was voting. You could vote, but you probably just want to keep that to yourself. Like, who cares? Ideas ran up and down the chain of command, as we said, but orders came from the top down, and everybody understood that. And it was a 24-hour deal. And when you signed up to be in the Black Panther Party, which you didn't sign up, you knew that it was a commitment of your whole life, period. That's very important because we didn't have a lot of people that were willing to do that. And so in my case, and I joined the Black Panther Party, I did what everybody else did at that period, which was in April of 1968. That chapter formed in February. So I just did whatever I was told to do. And by then we had a few, I think the newspaper was pretty much sort of rolling out, so we had to sell papers. That was one of the things we did. And you had to go to a political education class. And our goal was to find offices. We didn't have offices then. We had to do all these things. So whatever was required that we were expecting to be done, we did. And so when I joined the party, under the leadership of Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, because I could read and write, people thought I was really smart. So I sort of became part of the people that wrote leaflets and sent in articles to the newspaper. And when John and Bunchy were killed in January '69, I was named the Deputy Minister of Information, like Deputy Chairman, Deputy. Fred Hampton, for example, was the Deputy Chairman of the Illinois chapter of the Black Panther Party. Illinois had everything from East St. Louis to Chicago to wherever else they had in Illinois. So those were branches like we had. So in that context, I was the Deputy Minister of Information. And when Bunchy was killed, Bunchy Carter, the founder of our chapter, when he was killed, His mother, because people knew I could sing, I don't remember how, but, you know, everybody knows, when you live together a lot, people know you a little bit. And so I sang Precious Lord at his funeral at the request of his mother. And so afterward, David Hilliard, who was the chief of staff of the Black Panther, who was really running the party for those years when Huey was in jail and charged in 1967. So by 1969, David was almost the single voice of what we do of the Black Panther Party in terms of orders. And so we did our, I sang these songs, so David said, I hear you sing other songs, you've written some songs, will you, let's hear them. And so they took me to this, we all went to this house, Geronimo, whoever was there. And I played some songs that I had written. And he ordained that one of them would become the Black Panther Party national anthem. So then he said, I want you to go out and make an album, just like that, because when you got an order, you just did it. And you didn't say, well, gee, how will I do that? You just said, oh, Captain, my Captain, you know. So I knew a guy, you know, Horace Tapscott was a wonderful pianist, jazz pianist, who knew a guy with ABC Dunhill Records, who knew a guy, something called Vault Records, and amazingly, I was able to do the first album of songs. So now I have an album, and that album sort of put me in a light that I might not have been in as an individual, okay? But I was still in LA, still sleeping on the floor in a sleeping bag, because that's how we lived, collectively, and pretty rough. So eventually, it's a long story, but I ended up meeting Huey in New York when he got out of prison, and there was a big problem, what people call a split, but we like to say it was an expulsion of Eldridge Cleaver. And Eldridge Cleaver had been the Minister of Information, and I was ordained the new Minister of Information. So now I was in the Central Committee, but I was still sleeping on the floor, and now I'm sleeping on the floors in Oakland, because I was editing the newspaper. So we edited the paper for like, it was a 4-day, all-day, 24-hour thing. It was very hard to put that paper out. Because remember, this is not the era of the computer, this is the era when you make a mistake with a word and you've already put it down, and you got to cut that word out, you got to hope you can find the spacing for that word. Anybody old enough to remember that period, right? And so it was all day, every day, and so we never saw the light of a day, those of us who worked in the newspaper, but I was the Minister of Information. I slept in the front room in my sleeping bag, as opposed to maybe downstairs in the bunk beds. So I had a privileged position. So, and then ultimately, Bobby Seale left the Black Panther Party, and the Central Committee ordained me as the chairman of the Black Panther Party. Now, some people say, and I have to tell the story, and I'm going to be good about it, Bobby, I don't act crazy, but some people say, well, I heard you slept your way to the top. You slept with Huey Newton, you slept with Eldridge Cleaver, and you slept with Bunchy Carter, and that's how you got to be the chairman of the Black Panther Party. As though it was a big payout. You know, the golden, what is it, parachute? Like, are you insane? That just means more responsibility. But anyway, and so I've answered that question many times because I've been asked many times that you slept your way to the top as though the top had this big payoff for benefit. Nobody seems to get that far. Anyway, so my answer is I told this young man at Spelman who asked me that question, I didn't sing at Spelman. I said, well, the first thing I want to make clear is I never slept with Bunchy Carter. Even though I thought about it and wanted to, but anyway, and secondly, Eldridge Cleaver slept with half the women in the state of California at the time, in or out of the Black Panther Party, with or without their permission. And the third thing you need to know is that Huey Newton surely slept with the other men, because I'm sure I saw them coming in caravans up to Oakland to try to meet Huey. And none of those women became the chairman of the Black Panther Party. So what can we conclude? That either that was not the criteria, I was a bad assistant in the state of California. That's the clean version, Bob. So that's how. I mean, it was just a matter of, we assigned people to do what they could do. You know, if you are a good cook, we need you in our school. We had a school. We need you in the breakfast program. We need you to do cooking. And we did not have distinction between men and women. If you were good everybody had to work in the breakfast program at one point, male, female, whether you could cook or not, serve, clean up, whatever. If you were expert with weapons, we had a lot of Vietnam vets in the party, a lot, which was extremely helpful. They had so many skills, but anyway, so why are we going to now have somebody that doesn't know this? So you're probably be in the security areas, let's just say, right? So forth and so on. Everybody had to do what everybody was asked to do. Everybody was expected to sell papers, to hold watch. Everybody would be trained on weapons. Everybody's going to work in every program, whatever it was, you were going to do that work. We had a singing group called the Lumpin'. Whatever we got that from. That singing group called the Lumpin'. And the Lumpin', they did sort of parodies of sort of funkadelic kind of songs. So they would sing a song that had been, you know, a funk song, but they would put in some revolutionary, sort of language. And they were actually popular to go around with it. But they would say, we can't go to the after party because I got a full watch over on Central Avenue. I got to get up in the morning to sell papers. So you didn't get a pass. Like when I had these two albums out, I never saw any of that money. I mean, like one of them, I got $10,000, which is a lot of money, right? And that all went into the coffers of the Black Panther Party. So that's how we did it. That's how we did it. So becoming the chairman was just that was a role I could assume, not because anybody liked me, because Huey had a lot of women. And yeah, has anybody seen Huey Newton at all? Anyway, so he had a lot of women, and he rejected more than he had, you know what I'm saying? So that wasn't the criteria. So it was felt that I was the person the most qualified in the absence of Bobby C.
So can we fast forward to your work around, let's talk about the Condemnation of Little B. And if you could just give everybody have an overview of what the case is. In particular, though, I'm interested in your critique of the Black middle class relative and the Black elected officials.
Chapter I have called the abandonment. Yeah. Well, Little B, pardon?
And the critique of Clinton.
Oh, Clinton, please. Can't you just ask me that as a separate question? Little B was a young man, 13 years old, in Atlanta, Georgia, 1997. I had just moved back to the United States from France. And we just had the Olympics in Atlanta. And in January of 1997, this boy was on the cover. And that's why I covered up his face, because that's about how he looked at now as black boy, but black being the operative term. And he was on the cover of the newspaper. This thug, in quote, because you can quote people in the headline, so it's not like I said it in the newspaper. It's what we call, yellow journalism, right? Take journalism 101, put something like that. This murder, shoot this murder, go free, please. So they identified him as a thug, and the word super predator was also just being bandied about during that period, just coming into the lexicon for people like John DiIulio and William Bennett, former Secretary of Education, right? Blah, blah. They were talking about the super predator, a special group, sort of maybe a group of people who had a genetic flaw. And so there was a relationship between crime and genetics. And there are people who still think there is. Columbia University did studies on seeing these black boys, these Puerto Rican boys who all had brothers in prison, if there was some genetic connection between crime and their work. I mean, this is beyond stupid, okay? By the way, I spoke to Dr. Craig Venter. Does anybody know who that is? Head of the Human Genome Project. That's right, because I don't play when I do my research. So, and when I spoke to him, I said, I want to talk about genetics of race. Oh, there is no such thing, obviously. And there's no such thing as the genetics of crime, because crime is really it's a political question, isn't it? Because I can go kill a bunch of people in Afghanistan, and I'll get on a plane and say, thank you for your service. What we said? Don't we ask people on the plane and say, thank you for your service to all of our servicemen who are here? And you might have killed 10 or 12 people the other day. So that's not murder, is it? And that's not going to be a crime. And if you're a cop in San Francisco and you mow down Mario Woods like a dog, that's not a crime. It's just maybe excessive force. And we'll look into it, have a blue ribbon panel, discuss it. But that's not a crime. So you can kill people. Killing is not a crime. It's only a crime if they look like this. So let's not get it twisted. So this boy is all on the cover. people writing all this stuff about super predators, these bad boys, black people in the hood. People in the hood, frying somebody's hair, all up in the hair salon. Up in the hair salon. Bill. Up in the hair salon talking about that's the problem in the black community. These bad black boys walking around with their pants sagging. This is all this gangster rap. It's like we never listened to working with your hand and phone. You know, like nobody has anything else but these one little group of people with their little rap records. And so as though freedom was being denied us because of these boys wearing their pants down too low. And we still talk about that today. So this boy was the poster child for everything was wrong in the black community and the black people, as I said in my own book, and I would like to even read that section. Man, I probably can find it in a minute because I was so moved. Anyway, so it's an interesting book. So he was paraded across the front page as a murderer, a thug, but killed a good black father. That's the problem. These bad black boys killing these good black fathers. And the good black father, they kill him because he's a dope boy and this and that and the other. And I go, who puts a 13-year-old child on the cover of a newspaper and denounces him? And so I just had to go, go see about it. And so I did. And they said, oh, you're like the Elaine Brown, like that meant something, right? As though I could get him out of prison. But anyway, ultimately, so he was charged with a murder. So I just want to say this about the case very quickly. This is a man and a woman, I won't say supposedly because I'm editorializing, so I'll just say man and woman, husband and wife, in their car. There are 2 children in the back of the car. They drive from some place where they had bought a takeout dinner, and they were going to this neighborhood that they had just moved into because they had decided to save money so the wife could go to nursing school. The husband was working in some kind of factory. And they were going home, but they passed by this liquor store, little convenience store, and the wife went into the convenience store. She was pregnant, went into the convenience store to get a soda, and in the meantime, according to alleged testimony, which really didn't quite come out in the trial, Little B was a lookout for the dope boys, and he said, cut your lights to this guy. Guy didn't cut his lights, and he said, oh, you don't understand this. I won't say the words, but you must not know where you are. This is New Jack City. There's a whole script on this movie. And he went around a corner and came back with a rifle and blew the guy away through the window and killed him. The wife testifies that she hears the gunshot, runs out, sees somebody running down the street who is black, she says, even today. So that's it. Testimony against Little B is Big E, a major heroin dealer and a crack dealer in this area, which is known as the Bluff, which is the biggest right here near the AU, where you used to go get their cocaine. All know what I'm talking about, huh?
The West End.
West End area, just off the West End. All the kids from Georgia Tech would go over there. People would come in from Buckhead. All the rich people could come. Everybody knew you could go to the Bluff and buy crack cocaine, powder cocaine, any kind of weed, hydroponic, whatever you want. You can get it there. Ecstasy, everything you want can be gotten in the Bluff. So if we know that, how come the police don't know it? Well, that's the question that I raised. So this boy is supposed to arbitrarily have killed somebody because they didn't cut their lights. Now, we all bought into that story because we believe that's what little black boys do. Like, nobody just gets, we're just predators. We're out to just arbitrarily kill people. And we actually believe that. We believe it today. These bad boys, we don't see little Billy Bob. There was a guy named Kip Kinkle, 14-year-old white boy in Eugene, Oregon, who got up one morning, killed mom and dad, went off to school with a backpack full of handguns, a rifle in his hand, an automatic rifle in his hand, and a hunting knife strapped to his chest, and shot up 25 more people, 3 of them died. And what did the question, what was the issue? Was it this thug, criminal, king, super predator? No, they had a big sign. You know the way the discussion always comes up? There was a big sign in the banner across the school, middle school that day. Why, Kip? You know, it's like, really? Having trouble in experience? Maybe he was looking at too many violent videos. We should look at the video game question. We should consider, was he feeling isolated? What Columbine. It was the black ones wearing the black versus the ones with the sports guys, or whatever it is, the geeks versus the sport. Nobody called Chip a thug. We don't even call him a thug today. I guarantee you, if I was showing you a picture of Chip Kinkle and Little B, and I said, which one of these guys is a thug, I know what would happen. That's what happened this morning. So here comes all the people that had cases out there. Here comes Big E, Tom, Chucky Boy, two crackheads, all got a little money. They all said, yeah, Little B did. And he went to prison for life. As an adult, at 14 years old, 5 feet tall, he was in an adult prison. And that's where he remains today, 20 years later. And we have fought it, we have fought it, we have fought, and we just got denied parole one more time last week. And he's facing prison until minimum 2020 when it can be reconsidered. Now, this is the symbol of where we are right now in America. So why I call it New Age racism, because Negroes are involved in the condemnation. That's the part I want to read real quick. Just one little teeny second. Talk about how he was too wild, all of this. I can't find it. But anyway, I'm not going to read it because I was hoping to. Oh, yeah. You put it.
I was trying to read myself.
And this was the point finally, talking about all the newspaper articles and all the gossip and all the downing of this Little B. Yeah, I don't have nothing to do with those boys. That's not me. I work every day. I'm a good black person. These are the bad people. Even the people working in like low-level jobs have decided they'd be elevated by putting Little B down, right? These are the thugs. If you don't have nothing to do with them, Hillary Clinton called them super predators. Black folks went ready for the word super predators, so they just went, thugs. Isn't that thug? Here's a gangster rap. So, a black guy wrote in one of the articles that was written to condemn Little B, in the 50-some articles that came out in the first month after he was arrested. And this was a guy named Frederick Robinson. I said, then there was a subsequent Journal-Constitution, Atlanta Journal-Constitution editorial in which black journalist Frederick D. Robinson grieved over his own fear of young black street toughs and excoriated rampant black-on black crime. You know how we say, well, we can't talk about the police killings. Look at all that black-on black crime in Chicago. And that sort of reflects as though these things have anything to do with each other. And so Robinson writes, even if every white racist turned on their, incorrect grammar, their racist way, turned from their racist ways, the Little Bs of the world wouldn't disappear. This is what Robinson wrote. And this was the point finally. The courage, this outrage was not about the death of Darrell Woods, the victim. It was about the very existence of the Little Bs of the world, these non-fictional Bigger Thomases and guilty Emmett Tills. Now, some blacks were even calling for the rope. That's where we are right now, isn't it? That's why we need to lock these people up. That's what Clinton gave us. 3 strikes crime, we'll put everybody in prison. We're tired of these niggas. We're tired of them. White people are like, hey, I understand. Donald Trump says, I'm going to help you people. I'm going to give you law and order in your neighborhood. You can't walk home on the streets of Chicago because these black boys out here right now ready to kill everybody. And so that's where we are now, and that is my rage. And so I'm working for a lot of stuff that leads to, you know, sort of how do we survive, much less mount a new movement for the liberation of black people.
I got one more question if we're going to get to questions from the audience, but I do want to hear you talk about, so you ran for mayor of Brunswick, Georgia on the Green Party because you wanted to highlight this case.
I didn't actually run on the Green Party,
Okay.
but they would like to think I did.
Okay. they have publicity saying that you
Of course they do now.
and you ran for the Green Party presidential nomination.
Right, I ran for that nomination, but that was the fiasco. I don't feel like wasting my time. I'm not giving the Green Party that kind of credit.
Okay, but I just want to read your quote when you left, right?
Okay.
As you were out, it's not, I cleaned it up. When you were on your way out the door, you said, I believe the leadership of the Green Party of the United States has been seized by neoliberal men who entrench the party in internecine antagonisms so as to compromise its stated principles and frustrate its electoral and other goals. It is my sincere belief that the Green Party, as it now exists, has no intention of using the ballot to actualize real social progress and will aggressively repel attempts to do so. You see
That's
that?
pretty nice. I don't want to have a whole thing about the Green Party, because that gives them, so that involves them in my life, and they're not that deep for me, okay? And I don't want to spend my time on the Green Party.
What do you think about third-party politics?
Well, what is third party? All of them are still okay with America. You're going to become president of the United States, you're going to still be running the same army, with the Jim Crow going to fall away. Capitalist banks are going to dissolve, and you're going to cure everything by, and I know, what's his name, is running for the vice president with Jill Stein, and all of a sudden, I can't think of his name, somebody help him.
And John Baraka.
John Baraka, right. I know it's John, and what they going to do, suddenly have a revolution in America? No, it's not a revolutionary organization, never was. And every once in a while, they try to have a black face out of it, but it's a white organization that's in it. I don't want to talk about the Green Party, only because it's too much, but I will talk about the Brunswick question. I want to hear about that. They did not have anything to do with that campaign. They attempted to, and that's why I decided I would try to use their machinery to run for president, which we know we're not going to win, but this is going to give me a platform to talk about the little B's of the world, which is all I want to do. It's an opportunity to talk about issues in a bigger audience, and that was my goal. But the mayor of Brunswick had a different goal, and so quickly, I was living in Atlanta, and I went down to protest the G8 conference that George Bush was hosting in Sea Island, Georgia. Sea Island is the third richest zip code in America, and people don't even know what Sea Island is or where it is. It's among the little islands. It used to be part of the whole little Gullah Geechee universe, back when black folks were slaves and developing rice paddies and all those little areas on there. And then they were taken over. So now it's Sea Island. And it was mostly white protesters because black people didn't know what the G8 was. And nobody was going to go down to Brunswick, Georgia to protest the G8. But so few of us that called ourselves still activists or whatever, we rode down there. And then it was like, there's a few black people that were there that were in the protest. And there were like maybe 300 protesters total because everybody was scared. And 150,000 troops, and I am not making up that number. They had the whole thing. You couldn't even get deer, you couldn't even see Sea Island, you know what I mean? And so we're in this place called Brunswick, Georgia, and I go, what is this? Anyway, so it's this little city with 15,000 people right on the coast, beautiful coastline. If you've ever been to South Georgia, the southeastern coastline is absolutely stunning. And so some guy that was there was driving me somewhere, and we went over this big bridge, and he said, he was laughing, that's why he left. He said they had to just do this bridge over because one of the ships coming into the port knocked the bridge down. Why do you have a port? It's like Brunswick has a port, like the Port of Oakland port. This is a city with a port. 15,000 people, Glenn County, Georgia. No city, no municipality except Brunswick. Sea Island, Independent, whatever. Little Sea Island. No, pardon me, Little St. Simons, Jekyll Island, these are all the Golden Isles, as they're called. It's a beautiful part of this country in terms of physical beauty. But only one place had a city, and that was Brunswick, and that was the seat of Glenn County. And the seat of Glenn County had 15,000 people living in it, most of them blacks, more than 70% of the blacks poor. Here's a city with 15,000 total population and 9 public housing projects. And they never had a black mayor. I said, you never had a black mayor. It looked like something I could do. So I decided that if I ran for mayor of Brunswick and I had this little credential, that I could then go in and out of prison. I'm the mayor of Brunswick. I'm the mayor. Go to the mayor's conferences, all the little stuff that comes with being the mayor. So that's what I want to be, the mayor. I said, well, I'm going to move down to Brunswick. And I just picked it up and moved to Brunswick. Because I'm really crazy. And I just say, what have I got to do? So anyway, I moved there, and I started talking to people about running, but they were like, wow, we might get a black mayor. Now the existing mayor at the time, current mayor then, was a guy whose last name was also Brown, and who advertised himself as a lieutenant colonel in the Sons of Confederate Veterans. This is Brown. Wait, now remember, all the Confederate states celebrate Confederate Memorial Day, so don't get it twisted. I'm talking about all the 11 states Every year they do reenactments. You know how you do reenactments here? They have reenactors and reenactments. So they have reenactments, and of course they always have the battles that they won. And they go around dressed in their Confederate outfits, and everybody's really happy. And it's a state holiday in every one of these states. A day off, banks are closed, it's a state holiday, Confederate Memorial Day. And here are all these black people living there. But more importantly, they had this port. The Port of Brunswick, in volume of business, was equal to almost to the Port of Oakland. And nobody would recognize it, because there are only two ports in the state of Georgia. One is the Port of Savannah, one is the Port of Brunswick. So in economics, I'm saying, well, how are you going to be poor and the port is right? It's right there, you can see it. What the housing project that way. And it didn't have the canals that the Port of Savannah had. So it had easy access to open up. In other words, bam, you're in the ocean. So this meant for shippers a lot. Had containerization, had longshoremen, didn't have a union because Georgia doesn't have labor unions. Labor unions are outlawed in the dumbass state of Georgia. So anyway, which it is. So I figured I could win. I arrived there in like November of whatever the year before I ran, like 2005, 2004 I arrived there. By May, I opened my office right across the street from, like in a strip mall right across the street from a public housing project. And on May the 19th, everybody knows that date, Malcolm X, I opened my office at 300 volunteers in a city with 15,000. I had the longshoremen in the project, in the housing project, cooking deep fried fish, because people in Georgia, South Georgia don't eat meat as much as they like to eat fish, because they eat shrimp, you know. It's the shrimp boil, whatever. So they deep fry and going out and fish and bring it back, all for the Elaine Brown. We had people sign up like you couldn't believe. Black people were like, we don't have a black man. Now, needless to say, the Republicans that ran Seattle and everything else, were all the real money was, they kind of were not going to have it. And they had a thing called Blueprint Brunswick. And that was going to be the ultimate gentrification plan to get rid of everybody black. Because they're at the ocean. They had a plan for 50,000 buildings. And all these people were like, they're not going to do it. I said, yes, they are. We want the people's blueprint. We're going to wipe this out. Oh, so it was all that. People got angry. They had St. Simon's Island. They had a big fundraiser for this guy. One night they raised $50,000. By the time my election, where maybe 1,500 people voted. They raised $50,000. I still had all the things. I had valid things out. I was just signs of people just working. So finally, the last day of qualification, I was notified that there was a challenge to my qualification as on my resume. And they had a black woman with no teeth. It's important that you know she had no teeth. And she did not have her hair pressed, because she didn't have the money to get her hair pressed, because it was a decision, probably. And another guy, he was in the Sons of Confederate Veterans, and they had the same lawyer. Don't you find that interesting? A black woman and a white man for the Sons of Confederate Veterans both had the same lawyer, and that lawyer took me to the court. The court wasn't part of the hearing. It was in a room like that, relatively small, but packed. I thought they showed that I had had a gas bill in Atlanta after November the 2nd or something. I'm like, well, see, America's that kind of country where you can have more than one resident. See, as the Seattle people, they don't live only in Seattle, they live in New York, or wherever the hell they feel like it, right? I argued, I fought, and they removed my name. They reprinted the ballot just to get my name off of it. I sued, I went to federal court. The federal court said, you're right, you should be on the ballot, but we're not going to hold up the election to reprint ballots. This was like 3 days before the election, they said you have to have a write-in. And of course, the black people at this time were defeated. I still got like 300 or 400 votes, write-in votes. But they killed it. And then they removed my car, and then I couldn't rent any place. And then people were like riding on. That was a very, very scary moment. I spent another year and a half there, but I said, you know what? These people about to kill me. I was like, and ain't nobody in the community coming around me, and people like, you know, they after you. You know, so people were doing stuff like this, just in case the bullets came. I'm in South Georgia, and I was not getting a lot of support after the election. So I figured there's a survival question. Live to fight, you know, the art of war says you have to always live to fight another day. You have to assess your enemy, right? My enemy was winning this. You need to get yourself out here. But it was a successful campaign in that the masses of people were really engaged and involved. And they eventually did elect more blacks for the city council for the first time and so forth. So it was a victory of sorts, and it was an exercise. It was powerful, but I really did it so I can have the power to try to get my boy out of the joint where he is, where he remains.
So, do you think of just a little bit of time for questions? You see she is comprehensive in her answers. So if you have something that is a question, I would like to, if I could pose, ask, no comment, like if you just want to make a comment, could we save that for the reception where you can talk to her? If there's a question that you would like her to have the opportunity to have her, to think with her about.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I called on you for every person I saw, I'm sorry.
Okay, there's famous quote by Fred Hampton that says, "We don't fight capitalism with black capitalism, we fight it with socialism."
Right.
And a big solution that I'm seeing, like, being argued for is black-owned business. How far do you think black-owned business goes when it comes to fighting racism today?
Well, the notion that there is a black capitalist is erroneous from its start, on its face. I don't care about Jay-Z and I don't care about Obama. The bottom line is there may be some aspiring Negroes who want to be capitalists, but you have to have capital to be a capitalist. We don't own anything in America. Let's not get it twisted. So we can't talk about black capitalism. Huey Newton talks about black capitalism reanalyzed. Because of course we denounce capitalism as a concept. But at the same time, we have to have a way of surviving, and we don't own anything. Ain't nobody black made this, what you wearing, what I'm wearing, or anything in this room. Nothing. We don't have anything with phone service. When you think about communications, telecommunications, technology, are you thinking about black people? Are you thinking about black people? Are you thinking about banking? Thinking about black people? Are you thinking about airlines? So let's not get the black capitalist piece twisted, because that suggests that you want to put black people who are trying to make a few dollars into the same category with the Donald Trumps of the world. And Donald Trump ain't really the only one in the group, is he? Black people don't own anything that is ours. And in order for you to talk about freedom, you have to have some power over what affects you. I don't even have control over the food that I may or may not get to eat. That's why I have urban farms. I can at least have some food. That's my food. I don't have to go to Safeway and argue about Walmart and whether or not Walmart is a capitalist-owned company, which it is. I don't have to do that. That's that kind of myopic Marxism. That's a good term, myopic Marxism. Where you start thinking that, well, if you're going to join forces with capitalists, then you must be a capitalist. So Huey Newton wrote a piece called Black Capitalism, reanalyze, that you might want to read. So my position is that the notion of blacks owning businesses is in line with black liberation, period. I'm not worried about somebody selling perfume on Lenox Avenue becoming Donald Trump, or that he's now joined forces with and this is our friend. If I have a brother or sister in the black community that got a little chicken restaurant, I won't eat there, trust me, and I still know he got to get his chickens from some reactionary capitalist Foster Farms operation that he doesn't own, and I know that the flour that he's getting has to come from the fields that some poor person is being exploited to grow and all that other stuff, but nevertheless he got a little bit of a business, because you know why? We can't get a job. We can't get a job. Don't tell me about just formerly incarcerated. As far as America is concerned, almost everybody black is formerly incarcerated, because that's what the statistics show, right? You know how we used to say what you call a black PhD, I ain't gonna repeat it. You know, it doesn't mean anything, nothing. So we have to have money in our community. All of our people are not operating in a cooperative, collective sense, even though we like to claim it's an African tradition, and it probably is African, right? I probably Dr. Boyce Davis, they love it. So we have to have money of our own in order for us to even be minimally empowered to fight something else. So we own businesses in the Black Panther Party. We had a club called the Lamp Club. We had our school that was a business, but we had a production company where we would put on concerts and things, and we intended to have more things. as well as giving things away. How do we give anything away if we have any money? We made our own shoes, and we gave those shoes. We had a thing called fantasy shoes. Yes, we did. At the free shoe program, we made leather shoes in Oakland. They might not have been beautiful, but they were leather and they were functional. So the question of capitalism has to be revisited because Marx didn't know nothing about black people. Nothing. I don't even know. I think he did say something about slavery. Somebody likes to argue with me. I would get some little Marxists want to argue with me about Marx saying some two words about slavery. You know, Marx may not have been a Marxist, like Jesus wasn't a Christian, you know what I mean? So the bottom line is that Marx never really identified the class relationship of blacks in that one moment as slaves for 250 years that we had a class. He didn't even acknowledge it was a laboring class, and yet it was, wasn't it? It was the only laboring class that America had. You didn't have industrial labor. You didn't have other things. We were the laboring class, and we were black, and that was it. So when we want to talk about the class question, we have to be analytical as to what exists in the United States. This ain't Cuba. We're going to go up to the mountains and run down and slap Batista around. We're going to run off into the thing. And still they suffer because of that little moment in China. And still they can't get no running water. You know what I mean? So we have to analyze our situation. And we are in a unique situation as black people in America because we're not a colony. We don't even have land. Don't remember our name. Where's my song, my dance, my country, my language? My religion, I have nothing as a human being because every single vestige of my life has been stripped from me. So no one can ask us too much of anything about what we do. And if we don't have our little businesses, we don't have our little businesses. And we ain't threatening nobody's capitalist system with our little bit, and we're not joining it because we know who the enemy is, and it is not us. And we're going to keep our little businesses, and that has everything to do with the liberation of black people.
Can you speak to how the Panthers, when they set up the health systems within the community, and what can we learn from that to apply to the move to single payer to cover everybody equitably, equally?
Thank you. What a great question. First of all, the fundamental, we always had a fundamental theory, right? And the fundamental theory is everybody has a right to health care, right? It's a human right. Not I have enough to pay the insurance. Do people actually get charged for their taxes if they don't buy into the wrong?
I
can't even believe that we think that's a good idea, but anyways, it's ridiculous. Most civilized countries, even in the Western world, there are some civilized countries, they don't have single payer, they just have health care, health benefits. I lived in France.
Yes.
Nobody's worried about their children. They don't have an infant mortality rate in France. Your child can't die in France. You got to get out there and kill yourself. Because I'm going to give you a quick example. A woman that I know, a young woman, a black woman from Philadelphia, her husband, black man from Chicago, they met in France, long story about that, got married in France. He had a job there. She didn't have anything. She was there on a vicarious green card that he had. You know, she was the wife of a person with a green card. You know what I'm trying to say? No real standing. She gets pregnant. She gets all the free hospital prenatal care. Prenatal care, free. Free must be Camille. Then she gets this, she goes to the hospital, she stays 5 days after she has a baby. You know, here it's like, there's a baby out here. Baby's in the chair. Y'all are rolling out. I'm making this up, baby. You roll out, don't you? It's like, are you dead yet? Because if you're not dead, it's goodbye, right? If you stay overnight, that's $10,000. You could go to the Ritz and stay in the presidential suite and do better, right? They should pay you for that, as opposed to going to the hospital. If you don't charge you $5,000 a day, let me stay in the Ritz. You have full room service, real food, all that. I think it's a great idea for us. And she didn't pay for any amount. And the first year of the child's life, all the diapers are free. You get a bed, you get a baby coach, you get a driver's seat, a car seat if you need one, and you get clothing, and like I said, food and fruit. All this is coming. Now she's not even a citizen, or even she's married to a person with a green card, a work permit, really. That's what the French do. Now, knowing, I'm using that as an immediate example, because there are people in this country who really believe you should be paying for medical care. And if you can't pay for it, you can drop the hell dead. So you can say you have a pre-existing condition of cancer and now you can get insurance, but that doesn't translate into any kind of real thing. Because all of us have known people who have died. My friend Rashida died of breast cancer. She had all the insurance in the world. She worked at CNN. Her problem was she couldn't get paid because she had to take so much sick leave, and after that she didn't have any money. So yeah, she had cancer, even if she had any money. And she had 2 daughters. So she just faded away because she needed to work more than she needed. She traded off cancer treatments for work. So that's another part of it. So we decided to free health care. And so when we set stuff together, and this is how you do it. So we opened 3 clinics around the country. So I have a free clinic story that goes like with my free breakfast story. So I can only speak for LA because I was in the Southern California chapter. And when we had to get our clinic, and we would get an order from the top. It's like, we stand up and get an order, you on the phone. Say, yes, say, you need your clinic opened. Now, how do you do that, Pat? Of course. So we would say, we're going to have a clinic. We don't have any money. We can't rent anything. And we're not going to anyway. And in the black community, the wonderful thing about the hood is there's a million vacant, falling down storefronts, right? So we just would pick the best one that was near our office on Central Avenue, and we, in our case, and we just opened the door, you know, however we opened it. And we had a clinic. We put up a sign, we cleaned it up, painted it up, and got electricity started. You know, with that one wire that runs throughout the hood, the big orange one. Everybody's linked to it. Nobody ever knows exactly who's paying that bill. I see some people know what I'm talking about. There's a big orange cord that runs through the whole hood. It's like the cable. Everybody's on it. Don't let them, whoever's really paying that bill cannot get it turned off ever. Because we all must suffer. But anyway, so we would just hook up the electricity, we can say. And so now we needed doctors. And we just went to the UCLA and different teaching medical schools. And we said, can you give us an hour a week? You'd be surprised. And almost all of them were white doctors. People say, you don't have no black doctors there. I said, because black doctors scared to come into the room. Young whites were like, I'm here to help. You know, like, come on down. And we were some happy people. And we had enough to staff 7 days a week after a while. And we had one nurse, she was pretty committed, Marie Branch, a black woman. She was a professor of nursing at UCLA. And she sort of began, and then we had to learn about stuff. Like we did sickle cell testing. And we had to teach Dante and them, now look, first of all, you had to wash your hands, you know. But anyway, we did all that. And we treated people, and people came in. And most of the time, in poor communities, people are just depressed. Like, people, child, you know, my knee has been bothering me. You know, my back has been bad. You don't want to work, they're tired. You know, you're tired. I need to see the doctor. You know what I mean? That's a cultural question. Maybe, you know, my back is bad for about a week, I can't bend over. And so having someone in the neighborhood, because we weren't going to give you an operation, we're going to get a kidney transplant. But we were going to give you what any other clinic gives you, that sort of screening, that kind of blood test. We could do all of that because we did have doctors there. And then we could get you a ride to the hospital and the doctor. And so then we decided we needed to get more supplies. This is where the part. So we're like, how can we get supplies for our clinic? We like to have a few folding chairs. We wanted nicer stuff, obviously. So some of us, especially the women that they always said we were the bougie looking women, that being me. And we get away with a lot more than other people. Like I was very good at transporting weapons because nobody was ever going to stop me. Now we have like a whole car full of guns. It's a true story. So anyway, so this Sister Jones, she was like my Ethel, because I was going to be Lucy. I was going to allow anyone else. So I said, we have to, some of us would just make a run up to UCLA hospital, no, to the county hospital, to get supplies. Because if you're poor and you're black and go to the county hospital, they're not going to wait on you for 4 or 5 hours. So you got plenty of time to doodle around. And so they would trick you, but in those days, they would put you in a room and make you wait. You have me waiting in a room where there's this much alcohol and these many bandages and things. So we just pick up our supplies and leave. You know? Be like that. And one time, Joan and I, that's my favorite story, so I can tell it. So Joan and I are going up to get our regular supply room. And I see a wheelchair outside the hospital, and I go, you know what, we should have a wheelchair. Because when a wheelchair look good in front of the clinic, I have a wheelchair. It's like clinicky, you know what I mean? It's more medical looking. So I said, Joan, get in that chair. We're going to take this chair. Why do I have to get in the chair? Because you are Ethel. I'm Lucy. It's my idea. Ethel gets in the chair. Get in the chair. She gets in the chair. I start holding her. In my mind, I'm now an administrator. You know, that rolls you to your car. You know, that kind of thing. So I'm rolling her to her car. And we had this thing, the Geronimo Pratt's GOAT, it's called the GOAT GTO. It was the fastest car. You could go 80 in one block. I'm a very good rider. So I said, we just have to get to the car, but it's like a curve, LA County Hospital, anybody knows LA? It's like down, the parking lot was like down. So some kind of way when I turned, I flipped the chair wrong or something, and she fell out. And people are like, oh my gosh, you're okay. I'm like, please, are you all right, man? We could do this stuff instantly. It was like part of the whole theater, guerrilla theater. She's like, yes, I'll be all right. So I helped her back into the chair, so we wouldn't bring any more attention to ourselves. And we finally get to the car, and so we go, okay, let's get in the car. Let's just hold this thing up. Bam, you know, like go like this. Do you know that all wheelchairs don't go like that? Oh, when they go. The chair would just sit there. And we're like, where's the lever? Where's the this? And people like, we're bringing attention to ourselves. I'm saying, get in the back now. Get in the back. It's a two-door car. Roll down those windows. We put this chair here. You go hold this chair. And the wheels are like out here. Roll off from the hospital. I felt like that was a donation, don't you? And the thing, you'll be surprised how much Joan, you know, baby can't get back to her home. Baby can't walk back home. We take her home in a wheelchair. Girl, go on, let us take you home in a wheelchair. And that was a big part of organizing. We're so, in New York, they had an ambulance out in Harlem. Nobody was coming to get you in Harlem. You know about, I have a fever. You think somebody's coming in to get you? You have to say officer down if you want to get an ambulance in certain neighborhoods, right? You're not going to get any medical care. So we had all the variations on the theme in different places. And in Chicago, the police raided our clinics more than anything else because that was a big organizing piece. That was a big, and so the lesson of that was this. And I mean, there's a thing called the Asian Medical Clinic or something in Oakland, and they will tell you every day that because of the Black Panther model that they started giving out free medical care because we don't have to. When you are sick, you cannot call it. You have a fever in your house and you're by yourself. Who do you think is going to get you? That would be nobody, right? You just might lay up there and die, or figure out how to drag yourself down, or call Uber if you have some money. You had to Uber your way to the hospital, right? And then you have an insurance card. You don't go in the emergency room with no insurance card. And then that's going to cost you $600 just for sitting there, right? So we tried to show that this was a human right and that everybody needed to be man-free medical care. We did not talk about Obamacare insurance. Why am I feeding insurance companies? I'm not. That's an insurance scam. The whole Obamacare is insurance. Ask the people that run Kaiser. Kaiser's membership increased threefold in the first year of Obamacare in California, and I'm not making this statistic up because I know one of the vice presidents. Threefold membership increase. This is the best thing ever happened to Kaiser. So everybody's paying a little membership fee. They're still paying a little copay to go in and get the little clinic, and it's nothing but a clinic. Some things may be more important, but we have to make a decision if we want to see a new society that we can do this. And the one thing that we had was the volunteer doctors, and that really made a difference. Same thing with legal services. We had free legal services. You know, we had lawyers that were graduated because we didn't care. You know, if you're operating under some other law firm, you can operate under any law firm. But you're not in court. If you're a lawyer, you don't have to be a member of the bar unless you go to court. You can still give legal advice if you're a lawyer. So we did all of that. And so that is the thing that we did, and I think it's a model for today. People need to get back to the question of free medical care, where you have all these. I just read a piece where this is a black woman. I just read this, like Ebony magazine coming here, and you know Ebony says it's true. It's true. And and so there was an article about this woman who wanted to get a kidney transplant. She'd been going through all this dialysis forever and ever and ever. She was a young woman, like 35. And she said that she's never going to get it because we're not on the list and all this other thing, blah, blah, blah. And there is a new 3D printing operation they believe can replicate the human kidney. 3D printing. Now I'm big on 3D printing, believe me. I'm prepared to print everything. How just depends on the configuration. So the point is, 3D printing, maybe technology can cut several ways, as everything can. So I'm hoping that people will recognize that this is a human right, that we don't have the right to deny medical care to anyone based on anything at all. And if you're living, I'll just say this last thing, I just had a shoulder rotator cuff surgery. That was hard. And I mean, I'm out of it, my arm is pretty much, normal. And, but I thought to myself, my daughter came to stay with me, so I had a car to drive me here. I was minutes from Kaiser. They had all the most modern equipment to do it. It was a one-day, several-hour procedure. I went back home. I had a comfortable bed. I bought a new thing from Lazy Boy because I had to sit up and sleep. All this. Now, if I lived in rural Georgia, I'd kiss my rotator cuff goodbye, right? Because ain't nobody, I can't even get to, even if I had insurance, I can't get anywhere they want to do rotator cuff surgery. So that's the other part of the denial of service. When you are poor, it's even worse. And if you're poor, you live in an area where there's no services. And very often in poor communities, in urban, poor rural communities, you're just not going to get it. You're going to be sick and you're going to die. That's it. You are denied health care. There's no health care. Nobody's coming for you and nobody cares. And that is where we are in America right now. And so it's an important thing to bring up. Because without that, we just don't get sick, but you can't afford it. I used to tell my daughter that I had no insurance. Oh, no, you can't get sick. Because we don't have the money for you to get sick. My daughter was like, no, I'm all right. She went through her whole life and everything she was sick. But anyway, so it's very important. Should we take one more question?
But you know what? We have a reception, so she's gonna be right outside. You can drink a little wine, some cheese, and chat with Sister Elaine for the next 45 minutes or so.
We have we need a winding up.
You want to sing?
No.
We'll sing.
I would sing, but I did have a scare last year, so I know. So my voice has become lower and lower each year, and my breath is very limited.
No singing.
No,
Can we just thank you? Oh, you want to sing?
What should I say?
I don't know. You want to
No, I'm not
sing?
singing.
Bill and Bob can sing. They will.
What are we going to say? They don't know my song.
We have a few people here from the Darling Pop Jubilee singers.
Oh, these are the Jubilee people that recommended. Who recommended Fresh and Lord? I heard that somewhere over this corner.
They all looking at the ceiling right now.
Oh, you don't act like you didn't recommend it. Okay, well, let's sing.
You gonna sing?
Yes. You can just
I'm trying to find my key.
the chorus.
Well, there's no chorus, there's no chorus. There's just one song, Precious Lord, let me see. What is it? That's too high for me. Let me say it my turn. If you want me to sing. Stay out of it. Precious Lord, take my hand, lead me on, let me stand. I am tired and I'm weak, and I am worn. Let's see if I can get this next one. Through the storm, through the night, lead me. Nobody's joining in.